Miss Lizzie. I don't ever smoke the dizzy, but we can always share some ditsies. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to run. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Oh, welcome guys, Miss Liz in the house, and we have another returning guest in the house, and it's been about 2.5 years. We were just talking in the background, me and Michael. I have Michael Hingson in the house, and we're going to talk about his book, Live Like a Guide Dog, and we're going to talk about his tea. It's Triumph Education and Awareness, the Blind World Trade Center survivor, keynote public speakers, best-selling author. We are going to talk about it all tonight on Tea Time with you guys. But before we get started, you guys know how Miss Liz rolls. Get over to all those platforms: Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, Blue Sky, Lemonade, all those good platforms. Give those a like, follow, and subscribe. And if you notice the guests are on those platforms, give them a follow as well, because that's how we support one another in this house. Also, jump over to the podcast apps: Podbean, iHeartRadio, Listen Notes, Deezer, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those good platforms. Give those a like, follow, and subscribe as well. Miss Liz is on all of those as well. Then jump over to babyboomers.org. Miss Liz has been partnering with them about 4 years. And if you're looking to be on different podcasts, they have some incredible podcast shows over there as well. You can pitch yourself and get yourself featured on those shows as well. So let's start with disclaimer and then a beautiful intro. And then we're going to get Michael in here and we're going to have some fun with all of you guys tonight. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicating to sharing real-life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. I'm Miss Liz is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experience and is perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All guests, viewers, and participants are responsible for using their own good judgment when considering any action or decision that may relate to these discussions. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotionally triggering subjects. Listeners' and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have any questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me, aka Miss Liz, directly at my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com or check out my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Time. By choosing to participate in, comment on, or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntary. I, Miss Liz, welcomes you to join the conversation with an open heart, and if at any time you feel like this platform is not right for you, respect your wishes and decision and welcome you back whenever you are ready. Tea Time with Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness one cup at a time. Well, welcome to Tea Time with Miss Liz, where every conversation reminds us that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the ability to keep moving forward with trust, awareness, and purpose. Today, we are deeply honored to welcome back Michael Hingson, #1 New York best-selling author, keynote speaker, podcast host, and international recognized advocate for inclusion, accessibilities, leadership, and resilience. Blind since birth, Michael has spent his life challenging assumptions about what people with disabilities can achieve. His story became known around the world after he survived the September 11th attack on the World Trade Center alongside his guide dog, Roselle. Their remarkable partnership became the heart his best-selling book, Thunderdog, a powerful story of trust, teamwork, calm under pressure, and the extraordinary bond between a man and his guide dog. Michael's work, however, reaches far beyond one historic day. Through his book, speaking, advocacy, and podcasting, he continues to challenge the way society thinks about blindness, accessibility, leadership, fear, and human potentials. His book, Live Live Like a Guide Dog offers another powerful perspective, reminding us that guide dogs live with quality we can all learn from: trust, focus, patience, adaptability, and the ability to move forward without being controlled by fear. Today, we'll explore Michael's lifelong experience of blindness and independence, the extraordinary partnership between Michael and Roselle, surviving September 11, and the lessons that follow, how trust changes the way we face uncertainty, challenging misconceptions about disability, accessibility, inclusion, and creating opportunity for everyone. The wisdom behind Live Like a Guide Dog. Michael reminds us that limitations are often created by assumptions long before they are created by ability. So grab your favorite cup and join us for a powerful conversation filled with courage, trust, inclusion, resilience, and real life tea. And let me get Michael in here. Let's spill some tea. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. And it should be a teacup if you're going to bring in a cup, but that's okay.
Do we got you? Do we got you?
I'm here. Hello.
There we go. I
There we
got
go.
you.
And as I said, if you're going to have a cup, make it a teacup.
A good teacup, right, Michael?
Good teacup. That's it. Well, is this the time to say I hope I don't alienate anybody, but I'm a tea drinker, but that's okay.
So, Michael, for the people who haven't seen your first tea time together with me, share a little bit about who Michael was as a little guy and who Michael is now.
I was born in February of 1950, and I was born actually 2 months premature. I guess I was in a hurry. I've always been kind of in a hurry. But the result was that I was put in an incubator, and although medical science wasn't willing to accept it, Dr. Arnold Patz from the Wilmer Eye Institute at Johns Hopkins had already said, if you give a premature baby a pure oxygen environment, you could cause them to have their retinas not develop properly, and that's what happened to me. And so at the age of 4 months, it was discovered that I was blind. And the first thing the doctors told my parents to do was to send me off to a home for handicapped children, because no blind child could ever grow up to amount to anything. And my parents said, absolutely not. He can do whatever he wants, and we're going to give him that opportunity. And they brought me up with that attitude. And somewhere along the line, they told me what the doctors had said, and they told me what their opinion was. And they said, you know, you can do what you choose to do. And I grew up believing, and the National Federation of the Blind espouses the same philosophy: blindness isn't what defines me. What defines me is what I do and how I do it, and what I choose to do with my life. So blindness isn't the problem. Societal attitudes are the real issues that we face. And I grew up believing that, and I've done that for my entire life.
So, Michael, when did you, as an older gentleman, when did you realize that you could do anything possible?
I've kind of always believed I could do anything possible, although there were times that I couldn't do things because I couldn't find the technology or the whatever to do it. So, for example, for the first 27 years, let's see, is that about right? First 26 years of my life, I'd say 27. I didn't have the ability to. I didn't have
Ring
what
holes
it took
going
to
on
be able.
here.
Sorry.
Oh, there we go. We got you back. We had some little wormholes. Technology is just playing games with Miss Liz tonight.
Who is distorting the space-time continuum? That's what I want to know. So it was about late 1976. I was 26 when I got involved in a project because I was unable to read print out loud, and other people couldn't as well. But Dr. Ray Kurzweil found the National Federation of the Blind, and the project was developed to bring Ray's invention, the Kurzweil reading machine for the blind, to blind people. And suddenly I and other people were able to read print. So before then, I recognized that I didn't have the same process of being able to look at print that sighted people did. But I also didn't let that stand in my way. I found other ways to get material, whether it be in Braille, whether it be read out loud, somebody recording it. But having the ability to read print certainly opened up a lot of doors. And that's what happened with Ray Kurzweil and his project that I was involved with. So as far as me and when did I decide I could do anything, I always believed that there were ways to do things. if I were to refer to science fiction movies, I would talk about the second Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan, and um, talk about the fact that Kirk and Spock always talked about the fact of being able to do anything and made it happen. And I agree with that. I think that the reality is that we don't necessarily always have the technology directly available. Um, and over the past several years, I've talked about blind people being able to drive cars. Ever since Mark Riccobono drove a Ford Escape, specially modified with technology to give him the information that he needed, but he was able to drive it around the Daytona Speedway before the Rolex 24 race in 2011. And I ask people when I give speeches all the time now, can a blind person drive a car? And people say no. And I say, why? Well, because they're blind. And I say, wrong answer. The reason blind people don't drive cars today is that they don't have the information that sighted people do. That doesn't mean that the information isn't available. It means that we don't get it, we don't have it. But we've already proven that it is possible for a blind person to drive a car. And the reality is it's possible for blind people to do virtually anything. And if we can't do it now, we will be able to do it in the future. And by the way, the vehicle that Mark drove wasn't an autonomous vehicle. He was literally getting information from sonar and radar and technology that gave him the information so he could drive around the Daytona Speedway, avoiding obstacles, going through an obstacle course. He also passed a vehicle. The vehicle before he passed it was throwing out boxes that he had to avoid. The reality is that it's all about information. And there's so many things dealing with blindness that we deal with today. In 2023, I was at a hotel, and I won't go into all the details of the hotel, except that I had been awarded a prize to attend the Kelly and Ryan Live After Oscar party. And I took my niece and nephew, and we were at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. And about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we went upstairs to drop off our luggage. And we were coming back down the main stairwell from the third floor to the first floor, which was a very open stairway. You could see all the way down. And suddenly people started screaming. And I asked my niece, what's going on? And she calmly said, well, we just lost power in and around the hotel, and people are screaming about it. Because sighted people are so addicted and so fixated on having light as they demand it, that when something changes, it causes them to become fearful. And people were afraid, even though it was 3 in the afternoon, plenty of light coming in through the windows, it wasn't what people wanted. And I started to think about that. And later I wrote an article about it, because what I realized is we have to change our term for disability. Disability is not a lack of ability. Of course, my diversity friends tell me that it is. And my response is, if you say the disability is what it is because it's got dis at the beginning of it, then my response is, what about discern, discrete, disciple, and other things like that? The fact is, dis has nothing to do with it. Disability is not a lack of ability. Disability is a character that every single person on the planet has. It manifests itself differently for different people, but it is not a lack of ability. And the fact is that most people have eyesight, but they're light dependent. You guys are light dependent. You don't do well without a lot of light. Ever since Thomas Edison invented the electric light bulb back in 1878, we have worked really hard to make sure that people have light on demand. Nothing wrong with that. But don't denigrate the rest of us who don't happen to necessarily see with sunlight. It doesn't mean that we're less than you are. Disability is not a lack of ability. Disability is a characteristic that everyone has. And those are things that I've learned along the way. And we put some of those into Live Like a Guide Dog that you talked about before. But the reality is I grew up believing I could do whatever I chose to. And if I couldn't do it immediately, we'd figure out a way to do it, or it would come later. And I continued to function. But I refused to be put down or allow myself to complain and groan simply because people can do some things that I might not be able to do, because the reality is we all have gifts and we can all do things that other people can't do.
Absolutely. So, Michael, let's get into the guide dogs. We'll get into Roselle, but let's get into how many guide dogs you've had in your lifetime.
I got my first guide dog, Squire, in 1964. He was a golden retriever. I had him until 1973, and then I got my second guide dog, another golden retriever. His name was Holland. We love geography. And I had Holland from 1973 through 1986. And then I went and got my third guide dog, Klondike. Again, geography, right? And Klondike worked from 1986 to 1996. Then I got my fourth guide dog, Linny, who was my first Labrador retriever, a yellow lab. And Linny only worked for 3 years because she got bit by a tick that caused her to contract Lyme disease that morphed into glomerulonephritis, which is a kidney-based disease. So she had to retire. So in 1999, I got Roselle, and Roselle worked until 2008, then or 2007, and then I got my fifth guide dog, Merrill, or excuse me, sixth guide dog, Merrill, and Merrill only worked for about a year, a little over a year, but she became afraid of guiding, so she didn't last very long. And then in 2008, I got Africa, who was my seventh guide dog, who was a yellow lab. And Africa worked until February 9th of 2018, and then went to live with her puppy raisers. And she walked out the door, didn't even give me a backward glance. That's gratitude for you. But 2 days later, I went up and I got my eighth guide dog, Alamo, who is a black lab. He's my first black lab. He's a cutie pie, very bright. And I've had Alamo since February 2018. And I love to say he was my birthday present because we graduated on my birthday, February 24th, 2018. So Alamo has now been working for the last 8.5 years, which is cool.
Wow. So
and he's doing really well.
So out of all those guide dogs, what did they teach you about yourself?
They taught me that teamwork is extremely important. They taught me that we can work together. And working with a guide dog is incredibly much about building a team with two creatures who speak different languages and who have different thought processes. I know that the dog expects me to be the team leader and be responsible, and I have to pay attention to the dogs. I have to monitor them. I have to understand them when they're not feeling well. I have to support them. I have to be the confessee. I'm the one that they come to when they have a problem, and I have to figure out what it is because they don't necessarily know how to tell it to me. But the other side of it is that as a team, we work together and we each have a job to do in our process. Contrary to what sighted people think, because people say it to me all the time, guide dogs don't lead us around. My guide dog, Roselle, did not lead me out of the World Trade Center. My guide dog, Roselle, guided. That is to say, her job was to make sure that we walked safely. And if there were obstacles or whatever that got in our way, she would stop or go around them. But it was my job to know where to go and what to do and how to get there. And I spent a lot of time because I understood that. I spent time working in the World Trade Center before even really using Roselle. I left her in the office and I'd walk around with a cane to really learn the facility, to talk to the fire department, to Port Authority security people, the New York police, and so on, to learn everything I could about not only emergency preparedness, but where things were in the World Trade Center. Because I also knew that as the leader of the office, I was the Mid-Atlantic Region sales manager. It was my job to be the leader. And so I had to do what any leader would do. The difference is I don't read signs and do things like that. So I had to truly learn stuff. What I didn't realize until September 11th was that was creating a mindset in me because, as people always say, knowledge is power. And I gained a lot of knowledge. And on September 11th, that mindset kicked in and I was able to function, help other people in terms of getting out, doing other kinds of things that needed to be done, and working with Roselle to make sure that we walked out safely. And there were times that Roselle couldn't even work as a guide dog because the stairwell was so crowded that she had to walk at heel. So I wasn't using the harness, I was using the leash, and actually she was walking on my left side behind me and I was holding onto the stair rail. But it was my job to be the leader of the team, and it is my job. And she knows that, but I also respect her for the work that she does, and I respect that work in every guide dog I have.
Well, Michael, we got some questions that are coming into the studio, and I'd like to get the first one out to you. The first one comes in from Tools for Everyday Living. Michael, what is the first lesson your guide dogs taught you about trusting yourself?
I think the first lesson was, I always had faith in myself. It was probably more trusting in the team. But I think if you were to talk about trusting yourself, it was learning how to focus and stay calm. So there were times that I would be working with my guide dog. I remember one time I was working with Roselle. We were working at the time for Guide Dogs for the Blind, and we went to the Oregon campus, and I was staying at an apartment that the school had rented. And I went out for dinner, and I couldn't find my way back to the apartment afterward. And it was a pretty panicky, potentially speaking, situation because I couldn't figure it out. And Roselle didn't know what I wanted. I finally realized I had a GPS system and we figured it out. But what I learned from that is I need to stay focused. I can't comment. I can't not comment. I can't panic. I have to focus and stay calm for the dog. Because if I start to panic, the dog's going to panic. And my job is not to panic, but rather to figure out what's going on, figure out how we deal with it, and then get us where we need to go and give the dog direction. So between my talking GPS system that I eventually realized I was carrying and using something called structured discovery, which allowed me to kind of step back and look at what was going on and figure out where we were a little bit, we got back to the apartment and had a good night's sleep. Thank you very much. But it's all about staying focused and learning not to panic and learning not to become frightened, because if I do that, that's going to affect the dog. And one of my firm beliefs is I've had guide dogs primarily that have lasted a long time working because I stay calm, I keep them calm, I encourage them, but I don't let them get stressed out because I don't get stressed out. And that's because I've learned that from the dogs.
So, Michael, we have another question here from Polar Bear Parliament, and it's how did Roselle personality influence the way you approach difficult situations?
Polar Bear Parliament, that's cute.
Right?
Okay, yeah. So, well, she was very focused and probably as focused as any guide dog I have ever had. And that helped me because I knew that if I were going to keep up with her, I had to stay focused as well. And that's part of why I spent a lot of time learning about the World Trade Center, learning about what to do in different kinds of situations, learning how the World Trade Center behaved, learning what the fire department did in emergencies and so on. So she was focused, and that set a good example for me. And I believe very much in dealing with examples. And I will never denigrate my dogs for the job that they do. If they screw up, we're going to talk about it, but not in a horrible or mean way. What we do is we fix it. Mostly they don't screw up. If there's any kind of screw up, it's because I don't figure something out that I need to, but we go back and figure it out. But it's important for the dogs to be able to focus and for me to encourage them to stay focused to do whatever it is they have to do. So it is a symbiotic teaming relationship by any standard at all.
You know, it's an incredible teammates, right?
Oh, sure. Exactly right. And it should be. We're a team. We each have a job to do, and it's vitally important that we each respect the other's job. And I constantly realize and recall that we each have a job to do. And as the team leader, I have to be the first to respect the teaming relationship and the job that each of us has to do.
Well, we have another question, and this one comes from Rick Albert, and it's how much of being prepared for emergency comes from training and how much comes from mindset?
It's kind of both. I think, though, that it starts with a mindset that says, I want to be prepared, and I learn that it's necessary to be prepared. When people talk to me about what do I take away from September 11th, it is what happened on September 11th validated everything I've known and learned about myself and learned about being blind. And the reality is that I believe it's so vitally important to prepare for emergencies. I think that anytime any of us are going to spend any amount of time in a place, we should learn all we can about what the emergency evacuation procedures are. We should learn where all the exits are. And I mean all the exits. You never know what exit you're going to have to take. I've given a number of speeches and I've stood up on a stage talking, and I've talked to people about where emergency exits are, and they tell me about the ones behind them that'll take you out of the room where we're speaking, the auditorium or whatever, and I say, are those the only exits? Well, usually there are curtains across the front of the room. And you know what? Behind those curtains are also emergency exits that speakers and other people go out to avoid the crowds to get to other places in the building. And I always want to know where those are because I'm aware that they exist. It's important to know where all exits are because you never know what you're going to have to use.
Absolutely. And that doesn't just come to an event like September 11th. That comes for every single day of your life, right?
The bottom line is that we need to be aware. One of the things that I learned in college, and by the way, I have a master's degree in physics and a secondary teaching credential, but almost from the beginning in my freshman year, one of the things that I heard a lot from my professors was pay attention to the details. So for example, they said, you can figure out mathematically how to answer a question, but if you don't do it right, the units won't calculate properly. For example, if you're calculating acceleration, it has to end with feet per second squared, meters per second squared, or whatever. And if you can't get the units to balance and match, you haven't solved the problem the right way, even if you get the right numbers. The fact is, we should learn to pay attention to details all the time. And I work at it. And I've had a few lessons where I didn't. So for example, one of the first speeches that I gave was in Florida at a new Ritz-Carlton hotel to Federal Express. And I came in, the hotel had just opened, and I went up to a room to change. And I went straight to the room. They took me to the room and they said, we'll be back in 15 minutes to get you. And they were, but before that happened, the fire alarm went off. And there I was in this room. Now I knew enough to know where the stairwell was, and I knew enough about hotels to kind of figure out where emergency exits were, but I didn't know because I didn't ask, and I should have asked up front. But I figured it out and got to the emergency exit. It was a false alarm, of course, but by the same token, it was a great lesson to say, you gotta learn the stuff up front. So when I go into hotels now and I get up to my floor, one of the first things I do is inquire or explore to find the emergency exits, the stairwells, whether they're emergency exits or not. Because in the case of an emergency, you don't want to take elevators.
Absolutely. Well, Michael, the next question comes in from Dixon Road, and it's, Michael, your ability to turn such difficult experiences into lessons about hope and resilience is incredible, inspiring. That's a comment. The next question comes in from Paula. Did you experience on September 11 change the way you understood leadership?
I wouldn't say that it changed the way I viewed. It validated and it strengthened a lot of my views. And I would say it has helped me refine my view of leadership. So, what is a leader? A leader isn't necessarily a boss, and a boss isn't necessarily a leader. The reality is we all have talents, and good leaders are the people who will work with the people who work for them and recognize that there may be times that somebody who works for them may have a skill that would better benefit a particular situation than what the leader has. And I think that's extremely important. I've seen so many examples of companies that reward teams by rewarding the boss who's supposed to be the leader, but the boss didn't really do the work, other people did, and they don't get the recognition for it. And that isn't fair or right either. But I believe that leadership is a skill, it is a talent, and I believe that everyone has times when they can and ought to be the leader of different situations. But the fact of the matter is, if you're a leader and you're truly a leader, then you have talents that will work in different situations. And you also know that maybe what you can do isn't going to work in other situations. So one of the things that you can do is help find the other people who can help you and your colleagues in a particular situation. And I think that's extremely important.
Well, the next question we have comes in from Ryson Jones. How has your understanding of resilience changed throughout the years since 9/11?
Oh, I think that we overuse resilience a lot anyway, but I think that resilience is all about recognizing that you have the ability to do things and you use your skills to accomplish those tasks, and you use your skills to say, I can deal with this, whatever it happens to be. or I will find someone or something to help me accomplish whatever it is that needs to happen. But what's most important is, and you're going to deal with resilience, you don't let ego get in the way. I think it's extremely important that if you're going to be accomplishing anything, you're going to lead a team, you're going to work as part of a team, whatever, ego's got to stay out of it. One of my favorite books is a book written by a guy named Patrick Lencioni, Lencioni. It's called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's a fairly short book. It takes about 3 hours to read with Audible. And it's a book that talks about teamwork. It talks about the fact that good teams have all the people on the teams accountable to each other. So if you make a commitment to do something, you also give anyone on the team the right to not abuse you, but to challenge you. Well, you said you were going to do this by today. What's going on? Or how is it coming to get that done? And it's important that teams in general recognize that everyone on the team is a part of the team. Again, you keep ego out of it. What you do is you work to accomplish something. And there may be times that what you need to do is something that you have to ask someone else for. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy to ask somebody else for help to get something done. And oh, by the way, if they help, give them credit for it. But the bottom line is we're all, when we're working as a team, we're all on the team. And our job is to work together to get things accomplished.
Michael, we have another question, and then I'm going to pull up the book for all the people that are watching the video. This one comes from Natural Life. What is one change you would love most to see in organizations make to become more generally accessible and inclusive?
If I were to start with one thing, I'd say make websites accessible. The Nielsen Company several years ago did a survey that shows that 35% of all people with disabilities are more likely, and I think it's really higher than that, but are more likely to like companies that truly make them feel welcome by making their websites accessible, by making other aspects of their companies and their products accessible, but especially websites. Only about 5% to 5.5% of websites are truly accessible today. And the reality is websites can easily be made accessible. It's not magical. There are guidelines from the World Wide Web Consortium to help you do it, but people don't do it because they're not taught, their developers are not taught, or they think it's way too expensive. And it's not, if you make it right from the outset, a priority to make the website accessible and make it inclusive for everyone. That's one of the most substantive ways today to bring people into your company, because we're all looking for online sorts of things, online shopping and all that. And so we really should do whatever is necessary to make websites accessible. I worked with a company for 5 years called Accessibee. Accessibee is a company that started out with a widget, an online AI technology to make websites accessible that sort of worked. It didn't work in all cases, but Accessibee has evolved over the years, and they're very good at making websites accessible today because they do a lot more than just using an AI widget. They have coding people and other technologies to help truly make websites more effective and more inclusive than they were and than they are. And I think it's very important that companies realize that you should do whatever it takes to make your website fully inclusive for all. The CDC says that 25% of all people have some sort of disability. They may not be able to use a mouse. They may not be able to hear videos, which means there needs to be captioning. They may not be able to see the videos, which means that there needs to be talking. As I said, some may not be able to use a mouse. And so there are other ways to accomplish what you do with a mouse. But the website has to make itself, or be made to make itself accessible. And that is something that we should do across the board.
You know, and these are little things that people can change.
Easily.
And having guests like you, Michael, bring the attention to the organizations out there, like creating different websites for people, for all individuals, not just the site ones, right?
Right.
So I have a question for you, Michael. You have a best-selling book called Thunderdog, and then I have Live Like a Guide Dog. Those are two separate books, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again.
The Thunder Dog book is different than Live Like a Guide Dog, correct?
Right. Thunderdog was published in 2011. Live Like a Guide Dog was published in 2024. Thunderdog is really about my story with Roselle. But it isn't just the World Trade Center. There are a lot of lessons about blindness in Thunderdog. But in 2024, well, let me go back. In 2020, I realized that with the pandemic coming, there was going to be a lot of fear. And I wanted to write a book to do something that I hadn't really done when I had been speaking, which is to teach people how they can learn to control fear. And so I and Carrie Wyatt Kent began working on Live Like a Guide Dog. And as it progressed, what we ended up making it was a book with lessons I learned from 8 guide dogs and my wife's service dog, now my late wife's service dog, Fantasia, that helped us not only in creating teams, but lessons that I learned from each of those dogs about dealing with fear and controlling fear. And so that's what Live Like a Guide Dog is really all about. As an example, one of the things that people do all the time is what if everything to death? Well, what if this happens? What am I going to do? What if that happens? And the reality is we don't have control over 95% plus of all the things we what if. We just think about it. We worry about it, even though we have absolutely no control over dealing with it whatsoever. And we have to learn to not do that. Roselle on September 11th went through a lot of stuff, but when we got home, I took her harness off, and the first thing she did was ran off, grabbed her favorite tugboat, and started playing tug of war with my retired guide dog, Linny. And when I talked to the vet at Guide Dogs for the Blind the next day, he asked me, did anything threaten Roselle? And I said, no. And he said, well, there you go. Dogs don't do what if. She's in the moment. She was done. She went off and played. She had a good time, and then she did go out when she needed to. But the bottom line is we should learn not to what if so much. You know, there's so much that we don't have control over.
Absolutely. And if anybody wants to see Michael's first tea time, we did do Thunderdog. That's why the cover looked a little different when I was looking at it. And I was just like, oh, yes, we did Thunderdog the first time you were on Tea Time.
Yeah, we talked about Thunderdog.
So, Michael, how has your guide dog influenced not only your independence, but also your outlook on life?
Well, I've learned not to what if because of dogs. I've learned learned a lot from each of my dogs. I've learned a lot about team building. I tell people that I've learned a lot more about team building and managing life from working with 8 guide dogs than I've ever learned from Ken Blanchard, even Patrick Lencioni, who I mentioned earlier, Tony Robbins, Brian Tracy, and all those people, because working with a dog really is putting it into action. And I have to do it right, or the team won't work. And the dog is going to get stressed and won't last very long. And so I've learned that the reality is we can work as a team if we both try, but it's up to me to set the tone and for me to start the process and keep the process going. And my dogs have helped me do that in so many ways.
So, Michael, you mentioned your late wife. Did she have a guide dog as well?
No, she was in a wheelchair, though, her whole life. And so in 2006, we decided, while I was working at Guide Dogs for the Blind, we decided to care for one of their breeder dogs. The breeder dogs stay in people's homes rather than being in kennels all day. And we went over one day to look at 4 different dogs, and the breeder, the head of the breeding department said, I have a dog that I think will be the right one for you, but I've got 4 I want you to look at. And the first one was named Fantasia, who Marina thought would be the dog that we would take. Well, Fantasia came into the room, took one look at Karen, and jumped up in her lap. And that was it. The other 3 dogs just avoided the wheelchair or looked at it with great skepticism. Fantasia didn't care. Karen was her person, and we worked with her ever since. And Fantasia also became Karen's service dog because Fantasia, Karen was a quilter, and when she dropped things or whatever, material or anything, Fantasia figured out to pick it up and give it to her. She did that all on her own. She's a bright dog. She was part of a team and wanted to be part of a team.
I think it's really important to have that team, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think everyone should. I think that more people should treat their pets as true team members, members of the family. They're not just a dog, pet it and then let it go away or whatever. They should truly establish a relationship, a teaming relationship. The relationship would be so much stronger if they would.
I think they would get so much more out of that pet as well.
Oh, I think so.
Absolutely. Michael, why is moving from diversity to true inclusion so important to you today in today's world?
Well, I have talked to a number of people on the Unstoppable Mindset podcast, as well as other places. And I've talked to a number of so-called experts on diversity, for example. And they talk about diversity dealing with race, gender, sexual orientation, and so on, but they don't ever mention disabilities. And so I asked them, why don't you talk about disability? Oh, well, that's not a minority. That's a social justice thing. The heck it is. Balderdash, as I point out. The reality is the CDC says that 25% of all people have a disability. Sure, it's a minority in the traditional sense of the word, although I think everyone has a disability. And those diversity people certainly do. It's their myopic vision or lack of vision. But the fact of the matter is that diversity is not something that typically includes disabilities because people don't do that. And so I choose to take the position that we should be inclusive. And so I believe in moving forward. I believe in moving from diversity to inclusion is appropriate. Be inclusive and then take diversity from that and then go into doing the rest of whatever happens. But the reality is diversity is not something that says it doesn't include disabilities, because that means you're not recognizing that difference. So the reality is we need to be inclusive and start with that.
So Michael, how has your life changed since 9/11?
Well, I changed careers and became a keynote speaker, which I've been doing since fully since the beginning of 2002, even though I started before then. I've become more of an advocate for teamwork and developing leadership and trust. I believe it's extremely important. I've learned how to do a variety of things. I've been able to travel all over and have a lot of fun doing it. I've been to a number of countries. I'm traveling this weekend again, and I enjoy it. It keeps me busy. It keeps Alamo busy. And we have a lot of fun doing it. I get to meet so many people I've never met before. I get to go to so many places in the United States and in Canada and elsewhere. In June, we were in Quebec City to speak at the International Polyurethane Association. I've never been to Quebec City. I've been to Montreal, but I've never been to Quebec City. It was a lot of fun to go tour around. I love to go to different places and meet people. And I think everywhere I go, I want to meet people and get to know them better and try to be a good representative for me and so many other people.
So Michael, you often say fear can be a positive force. Can you explain that philosophy to the listeners?
Fear is, in reality, something that we can learn to control. And fear, if we truly learn to control it and use it properly, will help keep us focused. I'm not saying don't be afraid, but I'm saying control it. Don't let it, as I would put it, blind you or overwhelm you or paralyze you. You can control fear, and you can use that fear to help you stay focused to do whatever you have to do. I did it on September 11th. I do it in a lot of unknown situations. What I won't do is let it overtake me and make life difficult for me. My job is to say, okay, this is going on. There's a stressful situation here. What do we do about it? But that's what we can do with fear. We can use it as a vehicle to help us stay more focused, be more focused, and move forward without letting the world stress us out. How do we do that? Well, one of the lessons that I talk about in Live Like a Guide Dog is I think everyone can look at what happens. So let's take a given day. Let's talk about what happens on that day. Some good things happen, some bad things happen. Take time at the end of the day when you're in bed getting ready to fall asleep and think about what happened. What were the good things? Could you have done them even better? Think about the things that didn't work right. I will never say failure, because I don't think that failure works. I think that maybe something didn't work right. The question you have to ask yourself is, what could you have done differently to make it better? And you have a subconscious mind that is ready to tell you anytime you are willing to listen to it what to do to make things better. One of the examples I use regularly is Trivial Pursuit, which is a game that's been around for years, and people play it. Somebody will read a question from a card, and then they'll read some answers, and you have to choose the one that you want. How many times, and I ask people this all the time, how many times did you play Trivial Pursuit? They read the question and they read the answers, and immediately you think of an answer, one of the answers, and you say, that's it. But you say, oh, that was just too easy. That can't be the right answer. And you change your mind, you give a different answer, but that first answer was truly the right answer. And the fact of the matter is we need to learn to listen to ourselves, to listen to our subconscious minds, our inner voice, because it will steer us every time.
So, Michael, do you have any plans of writing another book?
Not at the moment, but maybe one will come along. If it does, I will certainly embrace it. I haven't really thought of anything yet. I'm enjoying speaking and doing the other things that I do. So I'm hoping the time will come when I can do other things. But right now, I'm speaking and doing the podcast on Unstoppable Mindset. And if anybody wants to be a guest, love to have you. You can go to michaelhingson.com/podcast, and you can email me from there. Or you can go to speaker, SPEAKER, at Michael Hingson, MICHAELHINGSON.com. And you can email me. Love to have you on the podcast. We're always looking for guests who have stories to tell, because I think that's what the podcast is really all about.
Well, we have a question that just came in, and it says, your life has inspired millions. What has been the greatest lesson you've learned from living without limits?
Team building, learning how to create a team, learning how to be part of a team, and wanting to do that. I think it's so important. I think that the only limits we have are the limits we put on ourselves, and we need to recognize that and face that as part of what we do.
So, Michael, would you ever write a book about all the guide dogs?
Live Like a Guide Dog has chapters about every dog.
So could you tell us a little bit more about, is it chapter 1, chapter 2?
Well, as we started writing the book, we decided, and well, as we got into it, we decided to take each chapter and make it about one of my dogs. I think Roselle has 2 chapters. And I'm trying to think if any of the other dogs do. Maybe Holland does. But what we did was we talk about the lessons I learned from each dog as we go through the chapters. And so it is really all about each of the dogs and the lessons I've learned, the adventures we had. It's a fun book, but it is a book that has a lot to teach people about blindness, being blind, and about teamwork and trust and leadership and dealing with adversity in our lives. The full title of Live Like a Guide Dog is Live Like a Guide Dog, True Stories from a Blind Man and His Dogs, about being brave, overcoming adversity, and moving forward in faith.
So let's talk about your faith. How has faith guided your journey through both triumph and adversity?
Well, I am a believer in God. And I believe that God is talking to me all the time, and it's up to me to listen. I've been involved in Methodist programs. My wife and I were both Methodists, and I guess I'm registered somewhere, but I don't go to church much since it's just me now. She passed away in November of 2022. We were married for 40 years, lots of great memories. And as I tell people, I have to continue to be a good kid, because if I'm not, I'm going to hear about it from her. She's going to beat me up or do something, I'm sure, wherever she is. So I got to be a good kid. I don't even chase the girls. Well, they're not chasing me either, so it's okay. But anyway, I've always believed in God. I believe that God is there. And if there are people who don't believe in God, that is their right. And I'm not going to condemn them for it. It's not my place to do that. But I believe in God. I believe that God talks to me. And in Thunderdog, we even talk about that some, because there was a time in Thunderdog when I specifically heard God's voice. When I'll brought it up, I'll tell the story. When Tower 2 began to collapse, my friend David turned and started to run away. And I turned Roselle around 180 degrees, and we started running away from Tower 2 as it was collapsing. And the first thing I thought of was, God, I can't believe that you got us out of a building just to have it fall on us. And as soon as I thought that, I heard in my head, as clearly as you hear me now, a voice that said, don't worry about what you can't control. Focus on running with Roselle, and the rest will take care of itself. And I also had this absolute sense of peace and conviction that if we worked together, we would be fine. Was that God talking to me? Yes, I believe it was. It wasn't anybody else because I didn't say what I said out loud. So I believe that's the case. I believe that God is part of our lives, and it's up to us to accept that or not. And it's up to us to learn. But I think that the opportunities are there, and it's up to us to take them or not.
So, Michael, since September 11, have you seen any changes in the safety protocols of exiting buildings?
Oh, I think there have been some. I haven't seen a lot specifically, but I haven't been in very much in tall buildings. I know there was discussions about people in wheelchairs having better escape chairs or things that they can be put in to go downstairs and be helped downstairs. I think there have been safety improvements. I think there's also been a lot more, especially with tall buildings, to not only keep the building safe, but to observe what goes on around them so that if another airplane is coming toward the World Trade Center, I'm sure that there are some other things that I don't know about that will help keep the building safe. But I believe that we learned a lot from September 11th, and I am sure that people put things in place. I don't necessarily know a lot about them. I haven't been told about them. And some of them I'm sure are kept quiet for reasons, but that's okay.
So, Michael, have you connected with any of the individuals that were in the towers with you since September 11th?
I've seen David Frank, my colleague, several times. I haven't seen him for a while. Last time I checked, he was selling real estate, but I haven't seen him for a while. I've talked to some of my other colleagues. They weren't in the towers mostly that day, but I keep in touch. But yeah, we try to keep in touch with people.
And what has decades of speaking around the world taught you about resilience and human connection?
That we can do it. I know that I've learned a lot about traveling throughout the world. I've been to a variety of countries, as I said, and I believe that we all are on the same planet. We're all part of the same world, and we need to all respect each other. I won't look down at anyone or toward anyone. I believe that we all are in this together, and people are more likely to accept you and be satisfied with you if you treat them right too.
Well, Michael, I've got some lightning bolt questions here for you. So just some quick answers. Guide dog walk or a quiet evening at home?
Both at different times.
Oh.
Typically, I do like to walk with my dog, but right now it's pretty hot outside, so we don't do a lot of walking. And I like quiet evenings at home. I like to read. I have a long island in my living room, and I will put on a book and walk around the island, and I'll get 10 or 15,000 steps in just walking around the island. But I also work with Alamo, and we get to exercise and do things as well.
So afternoon or evening, what do you prefer, coffee or tea?
Tea.
And what's your
In the morning.
What's your type of tea that you like to drink, Michael?
PG Tips tea is my favorite. A British relative of Karen's came over and brought us a box of PG Tips tea many, many years ago, and we both adopted it, and I've liked it ever since, and now I can get it on Amazon, so I like PG Tips tea.
And one word that defines courage for you?
Faith, staying calm, and working to help other people.
And what brings you the greatest joy today?
Being able to be around people, living life is probably the most important thing, and having a guide dog and my other friend Stitch, who is a 16-and-a-half-year-old calico cat who stays with us.
How long have you had the kitty cat? Did we talk about kitty cat before?
Not on this particular podcast. We adopted her in 2015. We lived next to some people in another apartment. We were living in an apartment down here in Victorville at the time, and I didn't know that the apartment next door to us had a cat, but Karen did, because every time she would go out, if the cat were up in the window, they would have conversations. One day we came back from doing something, and we noticed that the doors to the apartment were open and furniture was being carried out. And so Karen went over to check that out. I took some things in that we had to get into the house, and I came back out and learned that the wife had died in December of 2014, which we knew, but we didn't know that the husband had decided to go live in an assisted living facility. And so the result was that um, his sister and his caregiver were moving out all of his furniture, and he had already gone to be in the assisted living facility. And Karen happened to say, "What about the cat?" Well, they said, "Well, do cats run away?" Because all the doors were open. And Karen said, "Yeah, they can." Well, the cat hadn't run away. The cat was hiding under a couch. And Karen said, "Well, what is he's going to take the cat, isn't he?" And they said, "No, he doesn't want anything to do with the cat." He said, "Just take the cat to the pound and get rid of the cat." Well,
Wow.
Karen said, "Absolutely not," because we knew the cat was about 5 years old. And so we said, "We'll find it a home," because we knew that we didn't really want to have a cat in the apartment, because we had two Labrador retrievers. We had Africa and her mother, Fantasia, who was Karen's service dog. I didn't mention that Africa was actually from Fantasia's second litter. So that was kind of fun. We had mom and daughter. But anyway, we said we would take the cat and find it a home. Is the cat okay around dogs? And they called, and the husband said, "Oh, yeah, absolutely." Well, we said, "We'll take the cat." We took the cat into the apartment. And the cat wasn't really happy with two big dogs staring at her. But within a couple of days, everybody settled down. Everybody was having fun. But before we took the cat, I made the big mistake, I love to say, of asking what the cat's name was. And again, we had just planned on having it long enough to find a home. But I asked the cat's name, and they said the cat's name was Stitch. And I said, "Okay, this cat ain't going nowhere," because my wife had been a professional quilter since 1994. Do you think a quilter is going to give a cat named Stitch? And Stitchy has been with us ever since.
I like that, Stitch.
Yeah.
So Michael,
And nowadays, Stitch, when she gets hungry, she'll come and bug me until I pet her and go pet her while she's eating, because she wants to be petted while she eats.
so Michael, if everyone lived by one guide dog principle, what would you hope it would be?
Teamwork, and stay away from what ifing everything to death. Guide dogs live in the moment. We can learn to do the same thing, and we can learn to form better teams with not only people but other creatures as well, and we should do that.
And Michael, what's your final message to everybody tonight?
I think that the reality is we all are on this world. We're all part of the same planet. Don't live life in fear. We have so many things going on. People are fomenting fear all around us. Politicians and other people are. There's so many things over which we don't have control directly. But, even with politicians, when we have elections, we have control. We need to really look at what's going on around us, pay attention to the details, and make intelligent decisions. Don't necessarily do things just because someone tells you it's the right thing to do. Think about it and then follow through. Live life to your fullest, live life with principle, and just be the best person that you can be.
And Michael, where can people get your book, Live Like a Guide Dog?
They can get all three books anywhere books are sold. Amazon, they're available on Audible, they're Amazon, any other place where books are sold. You can go to a bookstore and they can order them for you. They're available from the Library of Congress for blind people and so on. They're on Bookshare as well. You can get Braille books from Bookshare.org here in the United States and I think elsewhere. But the reality is that they're all available, and I hope people will get them. And I hope people will read them and enjoy them. Love to hear from you if you read the books, or even if you don't, you want to just email, like I said before, speaker@michaelhingson.com. Love to hear from you. And I'm always willing to respond and interact with people all I can.
Well, I really had a blast again getting you back, and I missed your sense of humor, and that we had a couple of jokes before the show went live. So I want to just thank everybody for tuning in tonight and bringing your questions. Teamwork, it works with everybody, right? Like that's all work together. So thank you guys for joining in the studio, bringing your questions. Thank you to the listeners and supporters of Teatime. I'm just going to do a quick recap of what tonight's Teatime is, and I will see everybody on the 25th. That is right. There is no Teatime for 12 days. Miss Liz is going on vacation.
So where are you going?
I am going camping at a cottage with all my grandbabies, so I'm going to
cool.
take some time for myself.
Take a dog.
Well, my daughter does have a dog, so the dog might be coming with us. So it should be fun. It's a cottage in Harrington, so in Quebec. So it'll be nice to get away and have some break.
Good.
So tonight, what an extraordinary and deeply meaningful conversation we have shared tonight. Michael, thank you for bringing your wisdom, humor, courage, and life experience to the tea time table. Tonight's conversation reminded us that resilience is not something we suddenly discover during a crisis. It is built through preparation, trust, awareness, confidence, and the way we choose to approach every day. Your journey with Roselle on September 11th showed us that the world sometimes is something extraordinary about partnership. You trusted her training, she trusted your leadership. Together, you moved forward through uncertainty, one step at a time. Yet, perhaps one of the most important lessons from your story is that blindness was never the obstacle people assumed it would be. The greatest obstacle have often been society's expectation, misconceptions, and unwillingness to recognize ability beyond what is immediately visible. Through Thunderdog, Live Like a Guide Dog, and your speaking and your advocacy, you continue to challenge us to rethink disability leadership, accessibility, and fear. One of today's greatest takeaways is this: courage grows when trust becomes stronger than fear. Michael, your work reminds us that independence does not mean doing everything alone. It means having the tools, opportunities, relationships, and confidence necessary to participate fully in life. As we close today's tea time, I'd like to leave everyone with this thought. What could change in your life if you stopped allowing fear to make decisions before you had the chance to discover what you are truly capable of? We may not know every turn in the road ahead. We can prepare, we can trust, and we can listen. We can continue moving forward. Michael, thank you for reminding us that accessibility creates opportunity, inclusion strengthens communities, and courage often begins with one simple decision to take the next step. Until next time, continue challenging assumptions, continue building a more inclusive world, and continue serving real-life tea. Choose experience and awareness, one courageous step at a time. And tonight's takeaway from Ms. Liz is we do not need to see every step ahead of us to move forward with confidence. Like the partnership between a guide dog and the person they serve, life asks us to prepare, trust, adapt, and keep moving. Courage is often simply trust in motion. And I'll see everybody on the 25th, and we'll do this all over again.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to have